Okay, there we go. What I'm here to do today is to talk to you about Women in Life Sciences. We're a startup, nonprofit, professional networking group for women in this space. It's loosely based on the book Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. For those of you who don't know, she's the COO of Facebook, and she looks at this issue from the perspective that yeah, there's a glass ceiling, but that's really nothing compared to what we do to ourselves as women with our own self-perceptions, our perceptions of others, our perceptions of how others are perceiving us. You know, insert the crazy squeal on the hamster wheel is basically how it's affected me, my own thinking. So the title of this presentation is Stinkin' Thinking or the Glass Ceiling. And she also talks about some basic life skills that as COO of Facebook, she's worth $1 billion. And that's not inherited. You know, there are lots of billion-dollar women in the world, but, you know, it's entirely self-made. And she talks about some really basic life skills that she lacks. And so it's very inspiring. And let's see. Oops, wait a minute. So one of the life skills that she talks about in the book and that I'm going to talk about today, and this is an example of what we talk about in Women in Life Sciences, the idea that bravado is a life skill that is either not encouraged in women or it doesn't come naturally, and it's actually very, very helpful in the workplace, and when you lack bravado, it can hurt, and I'm going to talk about my own experience with that. But as I was thinking about this, I thought, well, what are some cultural icons that I could use to graphically represent what bravado might look like? And of course, I came up with John Hamm from Mad Men. We've all probably worked with people who look like this at times. And then I thought about, well, what does bravado not look like? And I found some pictures of Courtney Cox in Cougar Town. And essentially, what this slide is saying is that not like anybody really wants to emulate Mad Men, because we don't. We're happy those days are over, but man, is that a good show. Basically what it's saying is that if you have a healthy amount of bravado, it can really help to buffer you against the doubt and criticism that you experience in the workplace. It's inevitable, and as you go higher up in the food chain, you can experience a lot more doubt and criticism. And if that is very off-putting, you know, if you don't have a buffer against it, then perhaps it's a natural inclination to avoid situations in which you're going to experience a lot of doubt and criticism. And this is one of the ways that, you know, if you had a little bit more bravado, it could actually help. And also it buffers, you know, perhaps it's a factor in leading to a more positive self-perception. And Sheryl Sandberg actually does talk about feeling like a fraud. $1 billion sitting in the boardroom of one of the most valuable companies on the planet. She's the COO, and she feels like a fraud. Like, how is that possible? And when I thought about this slide, I've actually never, ever felt really, genuinely, regardless of how outgoing I may seem and confident I may seem, I don't think I've ever actually felt any of these things that John Hamm, you know, kind of graphically represents. Unfortunately, the needle has been closer to the Courtney Cox side of the equation, especially that in the middle with the giant glass of wine. You know, these are some of the things that we talk about in Women in Life Sciences. So there was a study in the book that was done, or actually that Sheryl Sandberg cites in the book, that looked at a group of men that were underqualified for a role and a group of women that were actually overqualified for that very same role. And what the study looked at was how those groups represented themselves. And what was interesting was that what the study found was that if a man was 60% qualified, then he was very likely to represent himself as 100% capable and very confident, and then he would negotiate from that standpoint, like essentially negotiating from a position of power. That study found that the overqualified women were very, by and large, representing themselves as less than capable, or if at least not less than capable, there was hesitancy and things like, oh, I don't have enough experience, that's not what my degree is in, and they negotiate from that position of perhaps not as powerful. And I don't know if anybody heard the report that came out recently. After 10 years of men entering the nursing workforce, it is now statistically proven that men actually make more. And the thinking here is that it's not necessarily, maybe it's not because men are more valued, even though they are fabulous. And women in life sciences really, really appreciate men and men in the workplace. It may not be that. Maybe it's the women who are negotiating and these types of issues that are affecting them. So maybe it's not the glass ceiling and others placing limits on us. Maybe it's the limits we're placing on ourselves. And wow, my time is running out, so let me keep going. Before I go into my experience with this, one other thing she talks about in the book is the tiara syndrome, which many women suffer from. This is the idea that work, 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 and work your fingers to the bone, do a great job, don't ask for much, just get the job done, do fabulous, and someone's gonna reward you. Someone will recognize you after the fact. In fact, someone will place a tiara on your head. And I identify with that, and now I'm going to talk very quickly about my career experience. I thought about what graphically represents my career, and I came up with the following graphics. The workhorse is not exactly the most flattering picture of me, but it really does speak to my workaholism, as does the medieval peasant there. You know, these are, I mean, definitely a workaholic, type A, get the job done. But it's the other two pictures that really talk about my flagship career experience in which I got in on the ground floor, spent 13 years through the exit plan, and I was essentially the grease for the wheel of this company. I was the behind the curtains, pulling all the levers. The impact that I actually did have was enormous. I'm not saying it was all on me, but I really truly believe they couldn't have done what they did without me. But I did it all quietly, and you know, I didn't tell anybody that that's what I was going to do ahead of time, so nobody really knew. Nobody placed a tiara on my head, and at the end of the day, after we were acquired, none of my potential partners or peers or anything really understood the role that I played. And it would be very easy for me to be bitter about that and be upset that, oh, you didn't recognize me, you didn't place a tiara on my head. When the truth of the matter is, what I really needed to do on day one when I was on that ground floor was make a forward statement in a bravado type fashion and say, here, look at the amazing things I'm going to accomplish for you. So that entire 13 years, I would have been in front of the curtain. I would have also subjected myself to potential doubt and criticism, which to this day I want to avoid. It's not fun, you know, and I still don't have the bravado that I feel that I need. And so in my sense, it really hurt me to not have bravado. It still hurts me to not have bravado. But I'm in Women in Life Sciences because I have discovered that there are many very highly accomplished women in this space, women in the world really, that identify with this. So I'm not alone, and neither are you women in the audience. And thank you very much for listening.